Now, I would like to turn to Mr. Tanabe, a long-time friend of Dr. Conan. He prepared many comments. But Tanabe-san, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Watanabe-san, and thank you very much, Denise. I'm very much honored to be here with Denise, and of course, Tarui Sensei here. I couldn't agree more with Denise about the importance of Japan-Hawaii relationship in terms of society, economy, geopolitics, and also importance in this region, Asia-Pacific region. You touched upon many aspects of Hawaii, which has strong implication in our relations between Hawaii and Japan. So I have several questions to make. I can go on now. First question is regarding the society of Hawaii. Hawaii is famous for home of Japanese Americans, Nikkeijin, such as late Senator Daniel Inoue. You touched upon this aspect. So my question is, what kind of roles those Japanese Americans so far have and will have in future in Hawaii economy and society, and of course for the entire United States and the world? That's the question number one. I can go on question. I can go on question number two. It's regarding energy and decarbonization. Hawaii, as Denise explained, is famous for its commitment on decarbonization, and the Hawaii state is the first state to commit net zero electricity by 2045. That's the first state in the United States. Thereafter, many states followed Hawaii. So I commend the Hawaii's initiative in leading decarbonization efforts in this field. So my question is, how far has Hawaii come toward the goal of net zero by 2045? Where are you now? And what are the challenges ahead? I'm sure there are a lot of challenges and difficulties to overcome. And just for my curiosity, of course, Hawaii has a lot of renewable resources, like solar, like wind, like geothermal. But as we, Japan, and other Asian countries and Europe and the United States nowadays are making efforts on hydrogen. Do you have any plan to introduce hydrogen production or hydrogen usage? This is the question number one. Number two.
Let's take the first two first.
Okay. Yes.
These are both very important questions. I'm excited to talk about the first question because Hawaii is such a multicultural environment. We have a higher rate of intermarriage between different ethnic groups than any other place in the United States. And maybe it's one of a unique place in the world where this is a normal part of our experience in Hawaii. But in Hawaii also, as I pointed out, the Japanese population is those that consider that they are of Japanese heritage are one of the most prominent populations in our islands. And it is showing a lot of, these citizens are showing a lot of leadership nationally for the U.S., Japan, Japanese Americans. In fact, we just had a conference here this past week. The U.S., Japan, council, U.S.-Japan Council, and it included 700 people from overall from U.S. and Japan. About half of those are from the U.S., and the largest contingency was coming from Hawaii, and that reflects how prominent our population is in terms of driving U.S. and Japan, Japanese American experiences. Even for those that are not Japanese, my own children, as I mentioned, are not Japanese, but have a strong sense of Japanese culture. It's part of our culture. It's been infused into our culture in many ways. So they will celebrate things like Boys' Day and Girls' Day. They will do bon dance and such like that. They will learn about Japanese customs and traditions, and even the Japanese language is very common to have exposure and understanding. And I think they appreciate a lot of Japanese values. As it makes sense in our Hawaiian Islands, there's much that is synergistic with the Japanese values of respect for land and one another, and living in peaceful harmony with people that are on a confined island location. This blends very nicely with Hawaiian traditions. And so many of these cultural aspects have become a strength of Hawaii's culture, and I think can lead us far with U.S. and Japan relationships. So these aspects are really quite important and strong. And in fact, our Hawaii Japanese Americans are very keen to learn more about Japan, and that's part of what the University of Hawaii is trying to promote with our Japan and Hawaii educational opportunities. When Japan students come to Hawaii, they're greeted by the Japanese American and other students, and that kind of exchange is really strong and beneficial for both nations, I think. So that is certainly an important aspect of our cultural exchange. Now, turning to carbon neutrality, of course, this is an important goal for our whole world, and we are seeing the challenge with climate change. We're seeing this more frequency of storms, fires, many aspects that are damaging of climate change. In Hawaii, we're seeing the direct influence of sea level rise. And in fact, we have situations of beach erosion, of storm surge, but also sea level rise that is causing damages to our beaches and our homes, in fact, homes falling into the ocean from sea level rise. So we've placed a high priority on setting an example for carbon neutrality, and you ask how far we are. And I think we've come quite far in terms of being able to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. And in fact, in some locations, it's easier than others. You asked about the barriers. And so some of the barriers, so we're seeing in some places, like on Maui, as I talked a little bit about, but also on the Big Island, we see an opportunity that the Big Island could get to carbon neutrality much quicker than other places, in part because their population is a little smaller, and also they have tremendous natural resources. So of course we have the highest rate of solar penetration in the nation, as I understand it. We also have wind. So solar and wind are, of course, important technologies. But in places like the Big Island, we're actually able to tap geothermal energy that comes from the live volcanic activity. This is quite powerful. We have to do it in a careful and culturally sensitive way, of course, respecting the challenges of being so in proximity to an active volcano. But we're also exploring in the Big Island whether hydrogen can have a new role to play. And I understand this is in a very early stage of exploration, where could we link geothermal energy to also hydrogen production? Is that possible in a way that could provide a more stable source of fuel sources. So this is experimental, and I think is actually quite promising. This role that hydrogen might play. Of course, as an economist, we're thinking about the cost of this as well. But maybe a location like the Big Island of Hawaii could provide an environment to experimentally look at these things in a new way.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Good answers. Okay, may I go on next question?
Yes.
We talked about climate mitigation, which is greenhouse gas reduction, decarbonization. Of course, that's very important. But looking at Hawaii situation, maybe urgent needs lie for climate adaptation, which is, you have to respond to the climate change. So what kind of adaptation efforts are you making in Hawaii? Like you talked about a little bit about disaster prevention. That is another question.
Yes.
Can I go on?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. And next question is regarding digital technology. Digital technology is the key for economic, social innovation all over the world. Hawaii is also same situation, I understand. How is digital tech applicable in daily life in Hawaii? Are there many startups in tech sector? How is digital tech taught at schools to make children more aware about the importance? That's a digital technology question. May I go on my last question?
Okay.
Last question is regarding sustainable tourism. You mentioned Hawaii has been attracting huge numbers of tourists, which makes Hawaii economy prosper. But recently, probably after the COVID pandemic situation, recently some districts in town or some beaches limit or restrict numbers of incoming tourists. How does Hawaii reconcile those quantitative economy with the quality of environment and society? This is, I think, important questions to Hawaii. Okay, that's it.
Well, thank you for these amazing questions. You're covering so many broad aspects, and it's wonderful that we can cover these in this webinar here today. Okay, so for our first question of adaptation, of course, we face a number of different aspects that are significant for Hawaii. One is the issue about water. Because we're an island, having potable water is something that's really critical. And as we have sea level rise that is impacting the freshwater lens, and it can also impact the availability of water. Management of water has to be one of our top priorities. So that is one aspect for climate change that we take quite seriously. Another aspect is the challenges we have with flooding and storm surges. And for that, we're looking at some of our nearshore assets in a new way. So so one area that we're looking at for development, many people may remember Waikiki Beach and the situation in Waikiki. As we project that there will be more storm surges, we're also seeing, you may remember there's also the Alawai Canal, and there is a golf course there. How do we manage those resources so that we create a beneficial approach for storm surges and managing flooding and such through new technologies, using golf courses, using the alawai in new kinds of ways. That's one kind of adaptation that we're working on with the alawai management plan. Can we do that in a way that also creates new and beautiful locations? So that is one example. There's other examples we could point to, but those are just a few. In terms of digital technology, clearly this is an area for future growth and opportunity, and we're seeing that there are many new jobs available in this area of digital technology. So this is an area where we are reforming their education system to create new kind of big data approaches. How do we manage data and big data approaches? I think that, that applies to, of course, this is a computer science area, but I also see it as very much applying to the social sciences, because much of the big data involves social areas of the social sciences. One aspect where we're making a lot of progress is in the area of health and health records, where Hawaii is, the University of Hawaii is working with our Department of Health and our Department of Human Services to collect data on health records for individuals, so we can track and see. We can de-identify the data, so we preserve privacy of individuals, but we can look at issues of health from a big data perspective, be it diabetes or other kinds of indicators, and we can see what kinds of underlying socioeconomic conditions or geographic location can contribute to health outcomes. So that's one area where big data is being used. We're putting techniques in place to use big data to better the quality of life and health for our populations. Okay, and I'm worried about time, so tourism. So of course, there's massive changes that we've seen with the visitor sector, especially as the past 2 years, we had our hotels were completely empty as we shut down tourism in order to preserve the health of our communities and stop the spread of COVID-19. That was the primary purpose. But as we started to open up, there were some secondary learning that we had from that experience, that we could approach the visitor sector in a new way. We're calling this regenerative tourism. So we have an understanding of what are those things that where having large numbers of visitors come to an area creates a challenge. One situation that we noticed is that parking actually is a big issue, and transportation is a big issue, where in Hawaii it feels like, one should rent a car and go on a Circle Island tour and go to some of the most pristine and nice beaches. When you ask communities what the negative impact is of that, often it's the traffic and the congestion and the feeling of not being able to move around. And so coming up with solutions that address those kind of issues are really very important. Another is trying to figure out how to restrain the tendency of things like Airbnb and the tourism that had been growing in neighborhoods. So we've limited, one policy that we've changed in the state is to limit these sort of renting out of rooms in homes, that kind of visitor, that should be for a length of 90 days or more. So that's more for a long-term visitor, because we don't really have the tourism infrastructure in neighborhoods so we're constraining that sort of short-term visitor in the neighborhoods as another way to constrain, control that. And so those are two examples. A third is that we're creating visitor experiences that allow visitors to give back to Hawaii so that they can make contributions in a way that's positive. And we're finding visitors really want to do this. This can be anything from planting an indigenous tree that will address the carbon emissions that came from their flying to the islands. They can plant a tree. They can see that their stay is carbon neutral in that way. Through that kind of project. And it can also lead to the reforestation of our islands. The visitors feel very good about this kind of thing. They can have experiences that allow them to give back to nature and through beach restoration projects. And we're creating these kinds of experiences that are not just positive for the nature and community, but also enriching for the visitor themselves because they learn about Hawaii in a more authentic way, and it can be a deeper experience than they might otherwise have. They don't need to come to Hawaii just to party and have a good time. They can also learn something that will take back a more meaningful aspect of their life. So that's our goal.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Yes, that's it for me.
Thank you, and Tanabe-san. And we have a questions from the participants. One of them is about COVID-19 and tourism. You already responded to that question. And another question is about your contact point. The question is Hawaii is a wonderful place for the Japanese companies to start a pilot project for them to go to the US and the world. So who would be the contact point for starting a test project like this in Hawaii? That is, I think, very important question. And I would like to have your answers. And before closing, I would like to have also comment from Professor Tarui before concluding. So please leave 30 seconds for him.
Okay, so these are two very important aspects. On the point of COVID and tourism, let me just say that Hawaii took a more conservative approach very early on with COVID-19. And I think we were able to put into place, because we had familiarity with the Japan's approaches to wearing of masks and things like this. This was not unfamiliar to us, and so we were able to, I think, control the COVID experience in a much deeper way. And I think I've already talked about other aspects of tourism and COVID. In terms of startups and pilot projects, I think this is an exciting opportunity for Japan businesses because we have different islands that have different characters, and it's a kind of a small economy where you can test out certain things to see whether they can move into commercialization in an American setting, and yet there's some familiarity there, and it's very conducive to interactions with Japan. And so there's a number of initiatives aimed at trying to foster Hawaii as a test bed for technologies for Japan businesses. And of course, some of that can be with big companies, like I mentioned NEC, I mentioned Hitachi, Tokyo Marine. These are big companies that are doing innovative testbed ideas. But we also want to be there for the startups and the new companies who maybe have new ideas, and they want to see, could this work in a place like Hawaii or other island places or other American places, a way to test these things out. So that is an important priority for Hawaii, and we do have, through our Hawaii Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, we call it DBEDT, D-B-E-D-T, that we have we have some efforts to support tech startups. there's an organization called PICTAR that is also another organization that helps tech startups. And I think depending on which area, if it's in the area of energy, we have Elemental Accelerator. That's another area where they're supporting tech startups. There's a number of different kinds of efforts, and actually even consultants that can help businesses who are thinking about these kinds of things. They can work with a consultant who is Japanese and speaks Japanese and can help them overcome what barriers there are in Hawaii to develop their technologies. And maybe this is something the university, we can help with too. I would love to do some workshops or even some Shark Tank ideas that we could do. Maybe with you, we can do these kinds of platforms. That would be very exciting as a new area of collaboration.
Thank you very much. Sure. We would like to certainly collaborate with you, and you and University of Hawaii could be a good contact point for various ideas for furthering our collaboration. So before concluding, I would like to have a comment from Professor Tarui.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watanabe. What I'd like to add is that regarding some of the points that Denise raised about the challenges associated with clean energy transition, for example, how to make the process equitable so that low-income households can also benefit from the transition, and the coastal management and climate change adaptation, what to do about the houses that are subject to sea level rise risk. What I see as exciting in Hawaii is that University of Hawaii has several projects, like collaborative projects, working with industries such as Hawaiian Electric and state and local government. So I'll be excited to share what we are finding through those collaborations. And similarly, smart cities and other areas where we see lots of success stories in Japan. I think by working with Rieti and other entities in Japan, I think there's much we can learn from Japan's side, and we can exchange what we learn from each other, and that will be an exciting future opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor Tarui. And so let us conclude the session. And thank you, Professor Conan, again for your wonderful presentation. And I'm very impressed by enthusiasm for deepening our bilateral our collaboration between Japan and Hawaii, and lots of potential for our future collaboration. And thank you also for participating, Professor Tarui and Mr. Tanabe. And thank you very much. Let us conclude the session. Thank you again.
Thank you.